The sky above Zereth burned with purple fire, the air trembling as alien ships moved in silence. The grand palace of the alien king shimmered under twin moons, its silver towers reaching the heavens like blades. Inside those cold walls, the alien king sat on his throne, his face carved with worry. For the first time in centuries, his empire was falling apart. His only daughter, Princess Lyra, was fragile and pale. Her body could not bear the harsh winds of their planet, and her heart was too kind for a world that worshipped power. The king loved her more than his crown, but he knew, if she stayed, she would die. Her health was failing, and his enemies were near. Every night, he looked at her and saw both hope and fear. Then came the night when he made an unthinkable choice. A message had arrived from Earth. A human, a soldier named Ethan, had once saved an alien child during the Great War. The king remembered that act. He thought maybe humans, though weaker in body, carried something stronger inside. Compassion. "Bring him," the king ordered. His generals were shocked. No alien had ever trusted a human before, but the king's voice was firm. "He saved one of ours. Perhaps he can save her too." Days later, a ship landed on Zereth. A tall man stepped out, wearing a dusty jacket and calm eyes that had seen too much. Ethan bowed his head before the king, though no human had ever stood in this hall before. The alien king's guards hissed in anger, but Ethan stayed still. His voice was steady. "You called for me?" "Your Majesty." The king's voice was cold but desperate. "My daughter is dying. Our healers failed. I want you to take her to your world. Protect her, teach her your ways. Keep her alive." Ethan was silent for a moment. He looked at the fragile girl standing beside the throne. Her eyes were bright but full of fear. She looked like glass that could break with a touch. But when she smiled weakly, he saw something. Courage hidden deep inside. "I will protect her with my life," Ethan said. That night, as the human and the princess prepared to leave, the entire court whispered. Some said the king had lost his mind. Others said it was fate. Lyra stood at the edge of the ship's ramp. Looking back one last time, her father stood there. Proud but broken, his voice trembled. "You are my light, my heart, go and live. My daughter, one day return stronger." The ship lifted into the dark sky, leaving behind the only home Lyra had ever known. Inside the cabin, she sat quietly. Watching stars drift by, Ethan checked the systems, but his eyes kept moving toward her reflection in the window. "You're not afraid?" he asked. She turned to him, her voice soft but steady. "My father believes I can survive, so I will try." For the first time, Ethan smiled. "You will do more than survive," he said. "You'll learn to fight, to stand, to choose who you are." The journey to Earth was long. Through the black silence of space, Lyra saw worlds flash by, moons crumble, and stars explode like fireflies. She began to realize how small her kingdom had been, and how wide the universe truly was. When they finally reached Earth, Lyra gasped. The sky was blue, the air warm and full of scent, grass, soil, and life. Ethan took her to a quiet valley far from cities, a place where she could rest, recover, and learn. But Earth was not as peaceful as it seemed. Shadows of war still haunted its lands, and in those shadows, others were watching. Men who had heard of the alien princess, creatures who wanted to use her for power. Ethan knew they would come, so he trained her. Slowly, patiently. He taught her how to walk through storms, how to listen to danger, how to trust her own strength. At first she failed. Her hands shook, her breath short. She cried when she fell, but Ethan never gave up on her. "Fear is not your enemy," he told her. "It is your teacher." And in the quiet nights when she looked at the stars, she remembered her father's words, "Return stronger." She didn't know then that one day she would return not as a fragile princess, but as a warrior who would shake empires, because destiny had already begun to whisper her name across the stars. Lyra, the human-raised heir of Zereth, the girl who would rise from weakness to legend. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. The small valley on Earth became Lyra's new world. The human Ethan built a shelter of stone and steel near the mountains, far from the curious eyes of people who still feared aliens. The wind there was calm, the nights deep, and the stars looked like distant memories of her home. At first, Lyra could barely stand for long. Her alien body was weak, fragile in Earth's gravity. Every step felt like lifting a mountain. She would stumble and fall, her hands scraped and her lungs burning. But Ethan never looked at her with pity. He looked at her with belief. "You can rest," he would say. but never stopped trying. He trained her not as a princess, but as a soldier. He taught her to run through the forests, to climb rocks, to use her body as her weapon. The first time she held a training staff, her arms trembled so hard she almost dropped it. Ethan only smiled. "It's not about strength," he said. "It's about will." Every sunrise she woke before the light touched the mountains. She would breathe deeply, mimic Ethan's movements, stretch her arms to the sky. Her skin, once pale and cold, began to glow with warmth. Her eyes no longer looked fragile. They held fire. Sometimes she would remember her father's court, the laughter of nobles who called her too weak to rule. Their words had once broken her heart. Now they fueled her. She whispered to herself each morning, "I will return stronger." Ethan watched quietly, guiding her like a shadow. He saw the change, the way she no longer hesitated when falling, how she no longer cried when she bled. "Pain teaches you what comfort cannot," he told her, "and courage comes from the days you want to quit but don't." But life on Earth was not peaceful for long. One evening, while they trained near the edge of the forest, a drone appeared in the sky. Silent and black, its red light flickered. Scanning the area, Lyra froze. "That's not yours, is it?" she asked. Ethan's face hardened. "No, that's trouble." He grabbed her hand and led her into the trees. They ran through the shadows, the drone followed, its light sweeping through branches. "They've found you," Ethan said. "We need to move now." That night they packed everything and fled deeper into the wilderness. Ethan explained as they walked. "Your father's enemies must have tracked your signal. They won't stop until they have you." Lyra clenched her fists. Her voice was no longer trembling. "Then let them come," she said quietly. "I will not run forever." Ethan looked at her with pride. The fragile girl he once carried was learning to stand tall against the universe. In the new camp, training became harder. Ethan gave her heavier weapons, taught her how to read human tactics, how to think like both a soldier and a survivor. When she failed, he made her try again. When she succeeded, he only said, "Do better." Sometimes, she would ask him about Earth's wars, about why humans fought among themselves. Ethan would sigh. "We fight because we forget what mercy means. But some of us still remember." He paused, looking at her. "You make me remember." Those words stayed with Lyra. In her mind, something began to shift, a new fire. Not of anger, but of purpose. She was no longer learning just to survive, she was learning to protect, to defend those who could not. One night, as the wind howled through the valley, Ethan woke to a strange light. Lyra stood outside, her hands glowing faintly with blue energy. Her alien power had finally awakened. The ground beneath her feet shimmered, the air trembling around her. Ethan stepped closer, amazed. "You did it," he whispered. Lyra looked at her hands, the glow dancing like stars. "No," she said softly. "We did it." From that night on, she trained harder, blending her alien power with human discipline. Each day she grew faster, stronger, wiser. She learned to channel her energy through weapons, through her voice, even through her heart. And though she smiled at Ethan's jokes and kindness, deep inside she knew this peace would not last. Somewhere beyond the stars, her father's enemies were gathering, preparing for war. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Ethan handed her a small pendant. "This belonged to my sister," he said quietly. "She believed that courage means standing up even when you're afraid." Lyra took it gently, her eyes shining. "Then I will carry her courage too." The stars above flickered like silent witnesses. Lyra lifted her gaze toward them. Her voice was steady. "When I return to Zereth, I won't be the girl they remember. I'll be the storm they never saw coming." Ethan nodded, pride and sadness mixing in his eyes. He knew her path was no longer his to control. The universe had called her, not as a fragile daughter, but as a warrior rising from human soil. And far away in the dark space between stars, something stirred, a new threat awakening, waiting for the moment when the girl who was once fragile would challenge the empire that cast her away. Because destiny had chosen her, and the fire within had just begun to burn. The wind carried whispers of danger long before the attack came. Ethan had always told Lyra that silence was never empty. It was full of warnings. Now as the night grew colder, she could feel those warnings in her bones. For months they had lived hidden in the mountains, training, growing stronger, but peace never lasts for those marked by destiny. One evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, The sky suddenly burned with red streaks, alien ships, fast and silent, cutting through the clouds. Ethan grabbed his weapon. "They found us," he said. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Her heart didn't race. Her hands didn't tremble like before. She had waited for this moment, not with fear, but with purpose. "Stay behind me," Ethan ordered, but Lyra shook her head. "No. You trained me for this," she said. Her voice calm, her stance firm. "Let me fight." The first explosion tore through the valley. The ground shook, fire spread through the trees. Ethan fired at the incoming drones while Lyra raised her hands, blue energy swirling around her palms like living light. The air hummed, and with a shout, she sent a wave of power that shattered two ships midair. Ethan turned, stunned. "You're controlling it," he said. Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile. "I'm becoming who I was meant to be." But the enemy was relentless. Dozens of armored soldiers emerged from the burning forest. Their armor shimmered with alien symbols. Sireth's ancient rival, the Kryn Dominion. They were sent to capture her, to end her father's bloodline forever. Lyra's pulse quickened, not from fear, but fury. "You won't take me," she whispered. Her energy blazed. She moved like lightning, striking, dodging, her movements a dance of power and pain. For the first time, she fought not as a student, but as a warrior. Ethan fought beside her, covering her flank, shouting commands. The battle raged deep into the night, fire reflected in Lyra's glowing eyes. Each strike she made was faster, sharper, more precise. When the last soldier fell, silence returned, heavy, trembling, almost sacred. Smoke curled into the dark sky. Lyra's body trembled, her breath ragged. Ethan put a hand on her shoulder. "You did it," he said. "You survived." Lyra looked at the wreckage, the destroyed ships, the bodies of her enemies, and said quietly, "No, Ethan, I changed, but victory came at a cost." Ethan had been wounded during the fight, a shard of alien metal buried deep in his side. He tried to hide it, but Lyra saw the blood. "You're hurt," she said, dropping beside him. He smiled weakly. "Just a scratch." But his eyes said otherwise. She carried him back to the shelter, her energy flickering weakly as she tried to heal him. The blue light from her hands glowed over his wound, but his human body couldn't absorb alien energy. "Don't waste your power," he whispered. "You need it." Tears burned her eyes. "You said humans never give up," she said. "Then you don't get to either." Ethan chuckled softly. "I taught you too well." For days she stayed by his side, guarding, watching, refusing to sleep. The memory of the attack replayed in her mind, the insignia on their armor, the mark of the Kryn Dominion, the same faction that once tried to assassinate her father. She realized now that this was no random assault. They had come to Earth for her. They wanted to erase her bloodline, to end the hope of the Sireth throne forever. When Ethan finally woke, pale but alive, she stood at the window, watching the morning light touch the valley. "They will come again," she said. "And next time, they won't stop." Ethan sat up slowly. "Then what will you do?" Lyra turned to him, her eyes glowing faintly. "I will stop hiding," she said. "I will go to them before they reach me." Ethan frowned. "You're not ready for war," she smiled faintly. "Neither was Earth once, but it learned to fight. You taught me that." He looked at her. The same fragile girl he had met months ago now stood tall, her voice calm, her will unbreakable. She was no longer the princess who needed saving. She was the one others would follow that evening. She forged her first true weapon, a hybrid of alien crystal and human steel. Forged under the burning sun, she named it Siren, meaning rebirth in her native tongue. Before leaving, she stood beside Ethan, who was still too weak to travel. "I will come back," she said, "but I can't run anymore." Ethan reached for her hand, his grip weak but certain. "Then go, my warrior," he said. "Show them what it means to be both human and alien." As she walked into the rising dawn, her cloak fluttering like a comet's tail, the world seemed to hold its breath. The fragile daughter of an alien king was gone. In her place walked something far greater, a bridge between worlds, forged by pain, love, and fire, and somewhere across the stars, the Kryn Dominion prepared their armies, unaware that the girl they once called weak was coming for them, not as prey, but as vengeance wrapped in light. The morning she left Earth, the valley was silent. The ashes of the last battle still marked the ground, reminders of what she had survived. Lyra stood on the edge of the cliff, her long silver hair flowing in the wind. The pendant Ethan gave her resting against her chest, It pulsed faintly, as if alive, as if remembering. Ethan watched her from the doorway of the cabin. Weak but standing. His wound had healed just enough for him to move. But the pain was constant still. He smiled. "You're really going back, huh?" Lyra nodded slowly. "It's time," she said. "My father's enemies won't stop. The Kryn Dominion has already crossed into Zereth's borders. If I don't return, everything he built will fall." Ethan walked toward her, every step heavy. "You don't owe them anything," he said softly. "You've already given enough." Lyra looked at him, her eyes glowing like two blue suns. "I owe it to who I was," she said, "and who I became." Ethan placed a small metallic cube in her hand. "This is all I can give you," he said. "A navigation chip from my old ship. It will take you to the human outpost near Mars. From there, you'll find a way to reach your world." Lyra clenched it tightly. "You've given me more than that," she whispered. "You gave me courage." She turned toward the mountains, where her ship lay hidden under the old ruins of a forgotten base. The small craft shimmered faintly, a blend of human design and alien technology she had repaired with her own hands. Each circuit carried her memory. Each dent told her story. Before boarding, she looked back one last time. Ethan stood there, framed by the golden sunrise. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them said everything words could not. Then Lyra smiled. "Thank you, Ethan," she said, "for making me human." The ship roared to life, dust swirling like smoke, and with a flash of blue fire, it rose into the sky. Ethan shielded his eyes as the sound faded into the distance. "Go get them, Princess," he whispered. "Make them remember your name." As Lyra's ship broke through the atmosphere, Earth became a blue memory behind her. Her heart ached, but her spirit burned brighter than ever. The stars opened before her, endless, dangerous, calling her home. Days turned into nights without meaning. The silence of space felt heavier than before. But she was no longer afraid of silence. She carried Ethan's words in her mind like a beacon. Courage means standing up even when you're afraid. The navigation chip guided her to the human outpost orbiting Mars, a massive station surrounded by debris and faint red light. When she landed, soldiers stared at her ship with suspicion. Guns raised, alarms blaring. Lyra stepped out calmly, her hands raised. "I'm not your enemy," she said. Her voice was calm but firm. The soldiers hesitated. She looked different. Not just alien, but powerful. The commander, a woman named Captain Rhodes, stepped forward. "You're the one they warned us about," she said. "The alien girl who fights like a human." Lyra met her gaze without flinching. "I need passage beyond your borders," she said. "The Dominion is coming for my world, and they won't stop with it. They'll come for Earth next." Rhodes studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "We've seen their signals too. Maybe it's time humans and aliens stop pretending they're different." Lyra smiled faintly. "You sound like someone I once knew." With Rhodes's help, Lyra's ship was refueled and rearmed. They gave her armor made of reinforced alloy, a fusion of Earth steel and Zereth's crystal plating. It shimmered like starlight and shadow combined. Before she left, Captain Rhodes saluted her. "You're going to start a war, aren't you?" Lyra shook her head. "No," she said softly. "I'm going to finish one." Her ship launched again, leaving behind the red glow of Mars. As she crossed the dark stretches of the void, messages from Zereth flooded the comms. Distress calls, broken transmissions, cries of rebellion and despair. Her father's voice came through, faint and strained. "Lyra, if you hear this, they've taken the capital. The throne is lost. Stay away, live." Tears filled her eyes. "No, father," she whispered. "I'm coming home." She adjusted the coordinates, locked her course toward Zereth, and pressed the throttle. The stars blurred into streaks of light as the ship entered hyperspace. For the first time since she left, she felt both alien and human in perfect balance, the compassion of Earth flowing with the strength of her bloodline. She wasn't the fragile girl her father once protected, nor the scared child who hid behind others. She was Lyra of Zereth, daughter of the king, student of the human, warrior of two worlds, and she was coming home behind her. Earth faded into the distance, but in her heart, Ethan's voice still whispered, "Be brave, my warrior," ahead of her. Her planet waited, scarred, burning, and occupied. The Dominion thought they had crushed a kingdom, but what they had truly done was awaken something they could never control. Ahead of her, her planet waited and scarred. Burning and occupied, the Dominion thought they had crushed a kingdom, But what they had truly done was awaken something they could never control. The return of the fearless daughter, the one raised by humanity, tempered by pain, and destined to burn brighter than the stars themselves. The war for Cirith was about to begin, and this time, the galaxy would remember her name. The world of Cirith no longer shone like the jewel it once was. When Lyra's ship emerged from hyperspace, the sight that met her eyes stole her breath. The skies that used to burn with soft silver light were now a storm of smoke and fire. Whole cities lay shattered, their crystal towers collapsed like bones of glass. The once living rivers of light that flowed through the capital were now black, poisoned by war. Lyra's heart clenched as she gazed at the broken planet. "Father?" she whispered. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with grief. The message she had received during her journey echoed in her mind. The throne is lost. Stay away, live. But she could not obey. She had come too far to turn away now. Her ship descended through the thick clouds, alarms flashing as the atmosphere flickered with enemy scanners. The Kryn Dominion's warships hovered above the planet like vultures, firing on any remaining resistance. Lyra's small craft slipped through the chaos unnoticed, landing in the outskirts of the capital, once called Varion, now reduced to ruins and silence. She stepped out into the ash-covered streets, her boots crunching over broken glass and steel. The air was heavy with dust and death. Her people, the proud citizens of Shareth, were gone. Only shadows remained from the corner of her eye movement. A figure darted behind a fallen pillar. Lyra raised her weapon, ready to strike, but a voice called out, "Wait!" A young alien boy, no older than 12, stumbled forward, his clothes torn, his face smeared with soot. His eyes widened as he saw her armor, the glow in her veins. You're her," he whispered. "The king's daughter, the one who left." Lyra knelt beside him, her voice soft. "What happened here?" "They came," the boy said, his voice cracking. "The Dominion burned the towers, took the healers, killed the guards. The king," he swallowed hard, "he was taken to the Citadel. They're using him to control the people." Lyra's breath caught. Her father was alive, but imprisoned. The weight of the moment crushed her. Yet within that pain, something ignited. The same flame Ethan had seen in her long ago. "Where is the resistance?" she asked. The boy looked around nervously. "Gone, most captured, some hiding under the ruins. There's one who still fights, and a general. One of your father's old soldiers, he calls himself Relic." Lyra stood tall. "Take me to him." They moved through the shadows of the fallen city. Every corner whispered of what once was. Laughter, music, peace, all of it now replaced by echoes of gunfire and screams. The Dominion patrols marched in formation, scanning for survivors, their red eyes gleaming in the dark. After hours of moving through the rubble, they reached a hidden bunker beneath the old council chamber. The door opened with a hiss, and inside stood a tall figure, his armor scorched. One arm missing, but his eyes fierce. "Who are you?" he demanded. Raising a weapon, Lyra stepped forward, lowering her hood. The blue light from her skin glowed faintly. "I am Lyra of Cirith," she said, "daughter of the king." For a moment, silence. Then Rollick's weapon dropped. His eyes widened in disbelief. "By the stars!" "The prophecy," he murmured. "He said you'd return." Lyra frowned. "Who said?" Rollick stepped closer. "Your father before they took him," he said. "My daughter will return not as a child but as a storm." "We thought it was the rambling of a dying man." Lyra's eyes hardened. Then it's time the storm began. The resistance welcomed her with awe and tears. Old soldiers who had once sworn loyalty to the king knelt before her. Children and civilians looked at her as if she were a light reborn. For the first time, hope flickered in the dark. Rollick laid out a holographic map of the capital. The citadel glowed red in its center. "They fortified it with Dominion tech," he said. "Shields, drones, even mind control devices. We can't breach it without suicide." Lyra studied the map. Her eyes locked on a narrow line beneath the structure. "There's a tunnel," she said. "An ancient escape route beneath the royal throne room. My father showed it to me when I was a child." Rollick nodded slowly. "It still exists, but it's guarded. You'll need more than courage to get through." Lyra smiled faintly. "Good thing I brought more than that." For the next few days, she trained the resistance, teaching them human tactics, guerrilla warfare and stealth. She fought beside them, ate with them, bled with them in every moment. She felt Ethan's lessons alive within her. The way he moved, the way he thought, the way he believed in something greater. By the seventh night, they were ready. Lyra stood before them, armored in light and steel, her voice calm but burning with purpose. "They took our home, our king, our hope," she said. "But they did not take us tonight. We remind them what Zereth means," the rebels roared. Weapons raised. The storm was about to begin. As Lyra looked up at the citadel glowing in the distance, she whispered under her breath, "I'm coming, Father." And somewhere deep inside that tower, chained and beaten, the alien king opened his eyes for the first time in weeks. As the ground trembled beneath him, a faint smile touched his lips. "My daughter," he whispered weakly. "You came." The night of the rebellion came with thunder. The broken skies above Zereth flashed with blue storms as if the planet itself was awakening from its long sleep. In the ruined streets of the capital, hundreds of rebels gathered under the flickering light of ruined towers. They were wounded, starving, hopeless. Yet their eyes burned with something greater than fear. Hope. Lyra stood at the front, her armor gleaming faintly in the stormlight. Her weapon serene pulsed with the same blue energy that lived in her veins. Around her stood Rallick and the few surviving commanders, faces hardened by loss but hearts ready for vengeance. "This is not just war," Lyra said, her voice echoing through the ruined square. "This is a promise. To our dead, to our king, to every child they silenced. Tonight we take back what they stole." The crowd roared. Fists raised, some cried, some shouted, but all believed. For the first time since the invasion, the people of Zereth felt alive again. Rallick approached her, his voice low. "The tunnel you spoke of, it leads directly under the throne room. The Dominion guards the entry point heavily. We'll need a diversion." Lyra nodded. "Leave that to me." As the rebels moved into position, Lyra and a small team slipped through the shadows toward the tunnel entrance. The air was thick with smoke and rain, the streets crawling with enemy patrols. Her every step echoed like thunder in her heart. She remembered Ethan's words. "Fear isn't your enemy. It's your teacher," and so she listened to it. The whisper of danger, the pulse of her instincts when they reached the tunnel gate. The Dominion guards were waiting, armored in obsidian suits that glowed with red energy. Lyra raised her hand, the blue light of her power flickering in response. "Now," she whispered. The ground trembled. An explosion erupted from the other side of the city. Rallick's diversion. Fire climbed into the sky, alarm screamed. And in that chaos Lyra struck. Her body moved like lightning. She slashed through the first soldier, the blade of Seren singing through the air. Energy crackled from her fingertips as she hurled bolts of plasma. The guards tried to form a line, but they couldn't match her speed. Within minutes the path was clear. The rebels followed her into the dark tunnel, torches lighting their way. The air was damp and full of echoes from centuries past, the forgotten arteries of the royal palace. When they emerged beneath the citadel, the city above shook from battle. The Dominion had unleashed its war drones, but the rebels were ready. Using old tactics, human-inspired traps, and sheer courage, Lyra climbed the last set of stairs leading to the throne room. The air buzzed with energy. She could feel her father's presence. Faint, weak but alive. Then a voice filled the chamber, cold and mocking. "So the lost princess returns." From the shadows stepped a tall figure, clad in black armor etched with crimson lines. His helmet hissed as he removed it, revealing a scarred, pale face and eyes like burning coals. "I am General Vorath of the Dominion," he said. "Your father is my prisoner. Your people are my slaves. And you," he smiled cruelly, "are too late." Lyra gripped her sword tighter. "No," she said calmly, "I'm right on time." Vorath laughed. "You think you can win with scraps of rebels and broken toys? You've inherited your father's foolish hope." She took a step forward. "Hope is what destroyed your empire last time. It will end you again." He drew his blade, long and jagged like the fang of a beast. The two circled each other in the grand hall that had once hosted peace and beauty. Now it was a tomb of ghosts and fire. When their swords clashed, the shockwave tore through the room. Sparks flew, stone cracked. Their fight was brutal. Alien strength against human-trained speed. Vorath's strikes were heavy, merciless. But Lyra danced through them like a storm. Every swing, every step carried echoes of Ethan's training, his voice in her mind. "Breathe." "Don't react," Decide, Vorath roared, slamming her against a pillar. "You fight well for a half-breed," he sneered. "But you can't win," Lyra's eyes flared. That's where you're wrong, she said. Her energy exploded. A wave of blue light blasting through the chamber. It struck Vorath and sent him crashing through the throne, the same throne her father once ruled from. As smoke filled the air, Lyra stumbled forward, breathing hard. Behind the shattered throne, she saw him, her father, chained and pale. His once mighty frame weakened, but his eyes brightened when they met hers. Lyra, he whispered, tears gathering in his ancient eyes. You came. She knelt beside him, cutting through the chains with her glowing blade. I told you I'd return, she said softly. And I'm not leaving without you, he smiled faintly. You've become everything I hoped for. Before they could move, Vorath rose from the rubble, bleeding but alive. His armor cracked, his rage unending. You think this ends with me? He hissed. We are eternal. Lyra turned slowly, her energy swirling around her like a storm. Then let eternity feel my wrath, she whispered. She raised her hands. The power of two worlds merging. Alien energy and human strength. Her body became a vessel of light. The blast she unleashed tore through the citadel, destroying its core. The explosion consumed the hall in fire and radiance. When the light faded, only silence remained. The Dominion's flag that hung over the throne was gone, turned to ash. Rallic and the rebels stormed in moments later, gasping as they saw Lyra standing amid the ruins, her father beside her, the chains broken, the warlord gone. She looked at them, exhausted but unbroken. The citadel has fallen, she said, but the war is not over. Outside, the people of Zereth looked up as the Dominion ships began to retreat. For the first time in years, the sky cleared, revealing the twin moons shining through the clouds. The rebellion had begun, and its leader was no longer the fragile princess. She was the legend reborn. Lyra, the warrior of light, the daughter of two worlds. The fires of war had dimmed, but Zereth still burned. Not with destruction now, but with rebirth. The air smelled of smoke and metal, yet beneath it was the scent of hope. For the first time in decades, the twin moons shone without shadows, lighting a world that had survived the impossible. Lyra stood on the highest balcony of the ruined citadel, her eyes fixed on the horizon. The wind tugged at her silver hair, carrying the distant sound of rebuilding, hammers striking steel, engines roaring to life, and the laughter of children echoing through streets once silent with fear. Her father sat behind her, frail but alive. His body had not yet healed, but his spirit had. You've done what I could not, he said softly. You gave them back their courage. Lyra turned to him, her expression tender. No, father, they already had it. They just needed someone to remind them. He smiled faintly. You speak like a leader now. Lyra shook her head. Not a leader, she said, a protector. Below them, the banners of the Dominion had been torn down, replaced by the sigil of Zereth reborn, a twin star encircled by light symbolizing unity, human and alien, strength and compassion. But peace, she knew, was never without cost. Reports arrived daily. Remnants of the Dominion still scattered across the outer systems, gathering power in silence. Worse still, a signal had been detected far beyond their galaxy, a massive energy wave heading toward them. Unknown and ancient, Lyra stood before the Council of Survivors that night. Representatives from every colony and tribe, even human envoys sent from Earth's alliance. They had come to witness the birth of a new era. General Rallic stepped forward, one arm replaced by cybernetic metal, his voice steady. The Dominion is broken, but not destroyed. They will return stronger. We must be ready. Lyra nodded. We will be, not as conquerors, but as guardians. A murmur spread through the chamber. One human envoy, Captain Rhodes from the Mars outpost, stepped forward. Humanity stands with Zereth, she said. Your war became ours the moment you fought for both worlds. Lyra smiled. Then let this be the first alliance of the stars. As she spoke, the ancient throne room flickered with light. Holographic constellations illuminated the ceiling, showing hundreds of worlds once divided by fear and pride, now bound by shared survival. Her father watched with quiet pride. You've united what centuries of rulers could not, he said. But be careful, my daughter. Power tempts even the purest heart. Lyra looked at him, her voice calm. Then I will not rule with power, but with purpose. Days passed into weeks. The people of Zereth began to rebuild their cities, turning the ruins into living monuments of resilience. The citadel became a sanctuary, not for royalty but for scholars, healers, and leaders from across the galaxies. Still, Lyra could not rest. Her dreams were haunted by the coming storm, that signal from the dark void, growing stronger each day, a whisper that spoke not of war, but of something worse, extinction, one night. As she walked through the halls alone, the pendant Ethan had given her began to glow. Faint and rhythmic, she held it close, feeling warmth pulse through her palm. Then she heard his voice, faint, distorted, carried through the stars, Lyra. If you can hear this, humanity is facing something beyond comprehension. It's coming from the edge of the void, beware. Her breath caught. Ethan, she whispered. You're alive. The transmission cut off, static filling the air. But the message was clear. Whatever was coming was not just a threat to Earth or Zereth, it was a threat to everything. The next morning she summoned her council. The time for rest is over, she said. The universe is shifting again. And we must face it. Not as separate worlds, but as one. Raleigh frowned. You think it's the Dominion reborn? Lyra shook her head. No, this feels older. Something beyond empires and armies. Her father struggled to his feet, placing a trembling hand on her shoulder. Then go, he said. Do what I once feared to do. Lead not through fear of loss, but through love of life. She bowed her head. I will. A week later, under the twin moons, Lyra stood before her people one last time, clad in her shining armor, serene at her back, the pendant glowing at her heart. Her voice carried across the city, through every broadcast, every speaker, reaching both Earth and Zereth. Once I was a fragile girl who could barely stand. A human taught me strength, a father taught me love, and war taught me sacrifice. I am no longer just of one world. I am of both, and I will fight for all who cannot. The crowd erupted in a thunderous roar. Their voices rose as one, chanting her name, Lyra. Lyra, Lyra! The king watched from the balcony, tears glistening in his eyes. The galaxy will remember her, he whispered. Not as a princess, not even as a warrior, but as the bridge between stars. As her ship lifted once again into the sky, her reflection shimmered against the cockpit glass, a symbol of every scar, every tear, every triumph. Ethan's voice echoed in her memory. Be brave, my warrior, Lyra smiled faintly, whispering back into the stars always. The ship vanished into the starlit horizon, leaving behind a world reborn and a legend that would never die, for she was no longer the alien king's fragile daughter. She was Lyra, the fearless queen of two worlds. The light between stars in her story had only just begun.